Welcome to my cottage. We are located on Stoney Lake, which is in central Ontario, about 2 hours north of the city. We are on an island. We're about 5 minutes from the marina, so it does mean a bit of a schlep to load all of the things in the boat and load them up the hill, but honestly, when you get here, you don't look back. It feels like a vacation when you're here, even if it's just for a weekend. My parents bought the property about 20 years ago, and we've slowly been fixing each building up. So when we bought the boathouse, we worked on that first, and that became our main dwelling. And then since then, we've slowly been fixing each of the cottages up. And what you'll be seeing today is our new main cottage. We wanted the cottage to be nestled into the forest, really. We didn't want to build anything that was too ostentatious. And the idea was that it matched the boathouse, the window trim and the fence, and the color of the building was intended to work with the other buildings on the property. We took the same approach for the inside as we did for the outside. It needed to be kid-friendly, it needed to be family-friendly. We have a lot of people in and out with, sandy feet and wet bathing suits, and that was the whole idea. It's not a big deal, right? Hard-working surfaces that are still kid and family-friendly. We went with an open floor plan that allows us to seat 12 people at the dining room table. We went with a large sectional that really allows us to pile about 8 people on it. We included a window seat, which is also great for kids playing board games. And we can get probably about 5 people at the peninsula in the kitchen. So something that was really important to me was when you walk in the cottage, what sort of element really caught your eye. And I think one of those elements is the custom chevron doors. We used a salvaged barn board to do the doors, and they actually end up being almost a sound barrier because the doors are so heavy that they do a great job of blocking the noise from the main part of the cottage. The canoe was a bit of a bone of contention between some of our family members. That negative space, some of us felt like, we weren't going to mess with that. But the other half of our family felt that, of course, we need a canoe on the walls because it's a cottage. And I think that in the end, having it there, it adds texture, it feels cottagey, and it just fits the space, in my opinion. The dining table has a bit of a story. It was a wedding present for my sister and her husband. And the boards are actually called thrashing boards, and they are from my parents' farm. It's quite beautiful. I mean, it was kind of funny because one of my nephews would joke that he would put his food in the little dip of the end of the dining room table, but it really is a special piece. There's quite a few vintage finds in the cottage, which, makes it feel very personal. The water skis actually used to be my aunt's husband's skis, and they just felt like the perfect way to use up the space on that wall. The kitchen layout didn't really allow for any uppers given the space to the left and the right of the stove. So it had to be planned in a way that still allowed a good amount of storage. You'll notice that there's a little bit of a secret hidden door. We keep all of our alcohol in there, and we've got a little hutch that allows for some storage, and we also put a pantry in the hallway as well. So, we've tried to plan it in a way that we can still get everything in there. We did put a dishwasher in, which in the beginning we weren't going to, and now we're obviously pretty happy we did. When we were doing the plans for the space, we didn't know whether or not to put doors up there or keep it an open loft space. When we were growing up as little kids, we would rent cottages with loft spaces, and one of the magical things about falling asleep as a kid was that you could still hear the adults talking below. So that was the idea when we planned the sleeping area, was that the kids, being as tired as they were being outside all day, the hope was that they would be tired enough to fall asleep without having doors up there Does that always happen? No, but there's something magical about being in an open space, I think, with other kids. For the bedrooms, we wanted to go with a simple, clean look. We went with white bedding. We carried the tongue and groove wall panels into all of the bedrooms. You also might have noticed the mirror that was in this guest bedroom, which actually disguises an electrical panel. For the shower floor, we actually went with what feels like pebbles. It's a stone mosaic, and I find that to touch, it's actually quite comfortable. And again, that to me really lends itself to a cottagey type feel. And the countertop is a quartzite, which is actually kind of a funny story because it was left over from a project of mine where I made a mistake, and it turned out to work out beautifully for our vanity. So the Boathouse was the first building that we fixed up, and that was initially our main living space. So that was where we would eat, that's where my parents sleep, and we would sleep in the small bunkies. But it was really our main entertaining hub when we first bought the property. In the bathroom, there is a pipe that goes out of the ceiling, and in order to conceal the hideous pipe, we found birch bark and glued birch bark around the pipe. So the white of the birch bark matches the white of the toilet.
And it looks like a tree.
And it looks like a tree. Our intent was to really give it that cottagey vibe, and there is something really special about basically sitting right on top of the water. It's such a nice spot to have your coffee and read the newspaper in the morning and watch the sunset. Just leaning up against the side of the railings on the boathouse and, looking out into the water is pretty special. We built the deck after the main cottage was complete. It's nice to be able to host lots of people out here. The trees provide a perfect amount of shade. In the dead of summer, the bugs really aren't too bad, and we're close enough to the kitchen, so we're close enough to be able to grab drinks. It's really the perfect place to relax. Instead of designing a fence or a railing that would have gone around the deck, we created these custom planter boxes that allow that same sort of protection, but aren't unsightly and don't block the view of the water. Just in behind the new cottage is another sleeping bunkie, which when we renovated the new cottage, all of a sudden realized the poor little sleeping cottage was really dwarfed by it. But it is quite private and it's a nice little escape. It's got one queen bed and then 2 trundle beds, which is great for when families stay. It does feel like a bit of a honeymoon suite, call it, because it's away from the bigger cottage, but yet it's still so close to being able to use the bathroom at the side of the new cottage. I used an old lifesaver that I mounted as a piece of art as the jumping off point for the color scheme in the bunkie. It was just the right amount of color without being too much color, and I think the space feels clean, but also relaxing and serene at the same time. Our family was growing, my sister's family was growing, and we really needed another place to eat and to sleep. So since we've built the cottage, it really has become the main building, whereas the boathouse, we used to pile on top of one another, and now this really offers another place for us to entertain. I feel very grateful that we have a space that we can host people in, we can have family up, because especially with our families growing, my daughter will hopefully be able to do that someday as well.